I used to count how many times he looked at me during dinner. Not lovingly, not curiously, not even with that possessive glint some wives pray for. Just looked. Tonight, it was Ciro. Ciro sat at the head of the table in his tailored black suit, carving into his veal like it hadn't once belonged to a breathing thing. Everything about him was quiet power, from the expensive watch he never checked to the way his guard stood straighter when he entered a room. Even now, the candlelight bent around him like it knew better than to touch him. I passed the wine bottle before he asked. He didn't thank me. He never did. I handled the shipment from Trieste, I said, my voice even, soft. The paperwork is clean. It's under Angelo's shell company now. His fork paused for a half-second. That was Ciro's version of approval. A grunt, a sound, a flick of his wrist if he was feeling generous. I smiled anyway. The good wife, the beautiful wife. The trained, tamed wife he could parade through rooms like a status symbol while pretending I had no teeth. He still didn't know I'd grown fangs. I reached for my water, holding the crystal glass with delicate fingers he once called ornamental. My reflection in the liquid was composed, serene. Pretty enough to disarm, dull enough to ignore. Perfect. You'll be needed at the gala Thursday, he said, eyes on his plate. Wear the emeralds. Of course, because my presence was never about me, only about image. The jewels were a message. De Luca women shine. De Luca women obey. De Luca women do not run. I'll have them cleaned tomorrow, I replied. He finally looked up, just for a second. It was sharp, like a man glancing at a chessboard to make sure the queen hadn't moved while he wasn't watching. I lowered my gaze like I'd been trained, but inside, something sharp bloomed beneath my ribs. I hoped he felt it, even if he didn't know why. We didn't speak the rest of the meal. The clink of silverware echoed through the long dining room, like a metronome counting down a life I'd already outgrown. Later, he walked past me in the hall without a word. His scent, bergamot, spice, and something colder, brushed my shoulder like a ghost that used to love me. If he ever did. He left his jacket on the back of a chair, a signal, whether he meant it or not. He'd be in his study for hours. I waited until the floorboards stopped creaking, until the house sighed that familiar silence. Then I padded barefoot into his office. I didn't touch his desk. Not yet. I walked to the bar cart, poured myself 1 inch of his private whiskey, the bottle he thought I didn't know existed, and leaned against the window where his reflection couldn't reach me. The city below us glittered like 1,000 tiny secrets. I sipped, and I waited, because a good wife knows how to endure. But a dangerous wife? She knows how to plan. The first time I lied to him, it wasn't with words. It was with a smile. A sweet, practiced, head-tilted smile I'd perfected after months of watching his mistresses float through our world like designer ghosts, always temporary, always interchangeable. I wore that same smile on our wedding day. People saw a soft bride, a lucky girl wrapped in lace and luxury. They didn't see the girl with shaking hands in her lap, memorizing the faces of every man who dared to whisper in Ciro De Luca's ear. Every cousin, every consigliere, every man too comfortable in the shadows. That was the day I started keeping score. I remember when you used to be nervous around me. Ciro's voice startled me. He was leaning against the doorway of the upstairs library, arms crossed, sleeves rolled up, wrist heavy with his silver watch. That watch had timed the rise and fall of men more dangerous than him. And somehow it looked heavier on him than anyone else. I placed the book down. Did I? He didn't smile. Ciro rarely did. His version of amusement was a flicker at the edge of his mouth, not enough to soften him, but just enough to chill your blood if you thought you were winning. I liked it, he said simply. Fear is honest. Then it's good I grew out of it, I replied. Fear makes for weak wives. His head tilted slightly. You were never weak, just quiet. Still waters, darling. Still waters drown kings. That night, I started my audit, not of his bank accounts. I'd already memorized those. I meant the real audit, of loyalty, of leverage, of every man who claimed to serve him but would fold if pressure was applied just right. It started with small things, a conversation overheard in the garden between one of his lieutenants and a girl with shaky hands and fake lashes. She cried about rent. He promised to convince Ciro to increase her allowance. I made a note. Then came the call I answered when his phone buzzed during a shower. Blocked number, man's voice, sloppy, nervous, promised, delivery tonight, no cops. I said nothing, Let the silence speak. That's when the man told me something he shouldn't have, assuming I was just the wife. Tell your husband that Elia wants double this time, or we walk. Elia. I smiled, hung up, added his name to the list. At dinner the next evening, I noticed it. The shift. Ciro's eyes lingered longer, not soft, never soft, but searching, like I was the one speaking a language he couldn't translate yet. He asked, "Did you touch my phone?" "No." "Lie." He nodded once, didn't question it, but I could feel it in the air, the pause, the almost. He didn't trust me. Good. I didn't need his trust. I needed his world to shift 2 inches to the left, just enough to make the crown tilt, just enough to make him wonder if the throne was as secure as he thought. They say power is lonely. They forget how useful that loneliness can be. Ciro De Luca lived at the top of a kingdom built on fear and silence. But me, I lived in his blind spot. He gave me diamonds and a last name feared in 3 languages. I gave him obedience, on the surface, and underneath I was learning him, his habits, his tells, his ghosts. Because I didn't want to leave him. No, I wanted to beat him at his own game, and then look him in the eye while I won. The first move had to be invisible. Not subtle, invisible. If Ciro even sensed it, he'd shut down, clamp tighter, pull back behind those cold, unreadable eyes and disappear into strategy. So I aimed small, an invoice, a single line buried in a shipment manifest, altered. The name of the front company was still legal, still traceable, but I rerouted the location of 1 dock, from Trieste to Bari, just a whisper of a shift. The goods would arrive 2 hours late. Nothing would be lost, except time. And in Ciro's world, time was power. I waited for the fallout. It came in the form of silence, not anger, not questions, just cold, controlled silence that settled over the house like fog. By morning, everyone was tighter, tenser. Even Luca, Ciro's right hand, didn't look me in the eye at breakfast. That told me everything. Ciro knew, but he hadn't confronted me, yet. I buttered my toast with calm precision, feeling his gaze from across the table. He sipped his espresso like a man considering war. That afternoon, I wandered into his office uninvited. Risky, always risky, but calculated. He didn't glance up from his desk. His voice was casual. Lost something? I approached slowly, stopping at the corner. I was bored. A pause. Dangerous word. I shrugged. I'm not dangerous. Another pause. Then finally he looked at me, eyes sharp, assessing, quiet. You forget who you belong to, Gettina, he said softly. That word again. Gettina, little cat. The first time he called me that, I'd blushed. Now I wanted to bare my teeth, but I didn't. I smiled. Do I asked. His jaw ticked once. He stood, walked toward me, slow and deliberate, stopped inches from my face. I didn't look away, neither did he. His fingers brushed my jaw, not gentle, not cruel, just enough to remind me of the leash he thought he still held. Then he stepped back and said, "Don't make me repeat myself." I dipped my chin, the perfect wife. But inside, I was screaming because I had his attention now. And attention was a weapon. Mid-story break, Chapter 3, welcome. Hold on, before I say what happened next, tell me this, how would you have made him notice you? Put it in the comments below. Now back to my mistake. That evening, the house shifted. Guards rotated, staff moved quieter, Ciro's world was responding, but not to a threat, to a question. A tiny crack in the rhythm of control. I walked past his study, barefoot, trailing my fingers along the wall. I wanted him to see me, not notice me, see me. And when I turned the corner, there he was, leaning in the shadows like he'd been watching the hallway, not working. Our eyes locked. He said nothing, neither did I. He waited. So did I. Eventually I turned away, because that was the game, not begging for attention, commanding it, then leaving it hungry. I went to bed alone. He didn't come, but hours later I heard him enter the room, not loudly, just enough to make sure I knew he'd been there. He stood by the window a long time, long enough for me to wonder if he'd touch me. Ask, demand. He did none of it. He just whispered one word before leaving. Careful. I waited until I was sure he was gone before I let myself breathe, because the first move was made, and now, the game had started. It started with a laugh. Too light, too soft, too close to the wrong man. Marco Falci, a business associate, harmless enough on paper, tall, handsome, harmless. Ciro trusted him. That's what made him useful. I let Marco pour my champagne at the fundraiser, let him lean in too close, touch the small of my back like he didn't know whose wife I was. He did know. That was the point. Your husband's a lucky man, Marco said, smiling over his glass. I tilted my head. Is he? The tension in the room shifted, like static crawling up my spine, and I knew, without looking, that Ciro was watching. I didn't need to see him to feel the heat of his stare. It burned between my shoulder blades as I laughed again, brushed Marco's arm, and took one unnecessary sip of champagne I didn't even like. Danger in a glass. I was drunk on it. And when I finally turned, slowly, I caught Ciro's eyes across the room. Cold, controlled, calculating. He raised his glass to me, but it wasn't a toast. It was a warning. He didn't say a word the entire ride home. Neither did I. The silence pulsed between us like a live wire buzzing with everything we weren't saying. I waited for it, the explosion, the punishment, the icy monologue about image and legacy. It didn't come. What came instead was worse. He followed me inside, removed his jacket, loosened his tie, and said nothing. Not until I turned my back. Then his voice, low and calm, cut through the air like a knife. You want him to touch you? I froze, turned slowly. He did touch me, I said, lightly, respectfully. Ciro stepped closer. Don't lie. I smiled. I never said I didn't let him. His jaw flexed, not with rage, with restraint. That was the thing about Ciro. He didn't lash out. He calculated. He buried things until they became useful, and I wanted to be useful to him again. He reached me in 2 strides, faster than I expected. His hand went to my waist, pulling me flush against him. His breath brushed my ear. You think you're clever? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. My silence was the answer. His grip tightened, not painfully, but possessively. You think I won't remind you who you belong to? A sharp exhale escaped me before I could stop it. Not from fear. The way his presence invaded every inch of space. The way he made ownership sound like a promise, not a prison. I think you already did, I whispered. His jaw brushed mine. Not a kiss. A threat. A claim. And just like that, I'd found it. His weak spot. Not softness, not kindness, but jealousy. He let me go, just as suddenly as he'd grabbed me. I didn't flinch, didn't move, just stood there, heart pounding, breath uneven. He looked at me like I was a puzzle missing pieces. And for once, I think he realized I might have taken them. That night he didn't sleep beside me. He stood by the window again, arms crossed, back tense, thinking, planning, and I smiled into the darkness. Because I didn't need his love. I didn't even need his trust. I just needed his obsession. And tonight, I'd earned it. The house felt different after that night. Not quieter. Ciro's homes were always quiet, but alert, as if the walls themselves had learned to listen more carefully, as if the air had been warned. I noticed it in the way the guards watched me now. Not suspicious, not disrespectful, careful. They moved when I passed, lowered their voices, avoided my eyes. That was new. Ciro hadn't said a word about Marco Falci. Not to me. Not to anyone, as far as I knew. Marco still breathed, still walked, still smiled too easily, which meant the reckoning hadn't come yet. Ciro never rushed his punishments, neither did I. He summoned me to dinner 3 nights later. Not in the grand dining room, in the smaller one, private, no staff, no witnesses. That alone was a shift. I changed carefully. Silk dress, dark, simple. Hair loose, no jewelry except my wedding ring. The emeralds stayed in their box. Let him notice that too. When I entered, he was already seated. Jacket off. Sleeves rolled. One candle lit between us, throwing shadows across his face that made him look carved from stone. Sit, he said, not unkindly. Just final. I obeyed. He poured the wine himself, watched me over the rim of his glass as I took the first sip. You didn't flinch, he said. I set the glass down. When? At the fundraiser, when Marco touched you. Ah, so this was the conversation. I didn't see a reason to, I replied. You should have. Why? I asked softly. Was I supposed to be afraid? His eyes darkened. Yes, I smiled. He leaned back in his chair, studying me like he was trying to remember when I'd learned to hold eye contact this long. You've changed, he said. I had to, I answered. You don't leave much room for weakness. That wasn't an accusation. Good, I said, because it wasn't an apology. Silence fell between us, thick, heavy, intimate. I could feel him recalibrating. Ciro De Luca didn't like surprises, but he respected intelligence. That was my only shield. He stood suddenly, circling the table. I stayed still. That was the test. He stopped behind my chair, his presence pressing into my back like a weight. His hand rested on the top of the chair, fingers close enough that I could feel the warmth of him without being touched. Do you enjoy making me watch? He asked. I thought about lying. Then I thought about how bored I was of pretending. I enjoy being seen, I said. There's a difference. His fingers tightened on the chair. By other men? By you. I corrected. He went very still. Then his hand slid slowly from the chair to my shoulder. I didn't flinch, didn't tense, didn't pull away. And that was when his breath changed. You're playing a dangerous game, Gatina, he murmured. I learned from the best. His thumb brushed my collarbone, not possessive, exploratory, like he was touching something he didn't quite own anymore and didn't like the feeling. You think I don't see what you're doing? He asked. I think, I said carefully, that you see what you want to see. His grip tightened, not painful, grounding. And what's that? That I'm still yours, a beat. Then his hand slid up my neck, fingers cradling the base of my skull. You are, he said, but not the way you used to be. I swallowed. Neither of us looked away. He released me first, stepped back, returned to his seat. That, too, was deliberate. Dinner continued in strange, intimate quiet. We spoke of logistics, of schedules, of a meeting he had in Milan. Normal things. But the air between us stayed charged. Every glance felt like a calculation, every pause a challenge. When we finished, he stood and offered his hand. I hesitated, just long enough for him to notice. Then I took it. He pulled me close, not to kiss me, just to hold me there. You could have left, he said quietly, at any point. I know. Why didn't you? I looked up at him. Because I wanted you to feel this, because I wanted to matter, because I wanted to win. Instead, I said, because this is my life. His thumb brushed my ring. Then stop testing me. I leaned in just slightly. Stop giving me reasons. For a moment, a dangerous, fragile moment, something like a smile touched his mouth. Then he let me go. That night, he came to bed. He didn't touch me, didn't pull me close, but he stayed. And when I shifted in my sleep, his arm came around me automatically. Protective, unconscious, possessive. I didn't flinch. I let myself rest there. Because tonight wasn't about victory, it was about proximity. And proximity? That's where wars are won. The lie came easily. That's how I knew I was already dangerous. It wasn't rehearsed. It didn't require a pause or a breath or a practiced expression in the mirror. It slid from my mouth like truth, shaped perfectly to fit the fear I needed him to feel. I think someone's been following me. Ciro didn't look up right away. He was reading a report at the kitchen island, glasses on, sleeves rolled to his forearms. The domesticity of it would have been laughable if it didn't make my chest ache in strange, unfamiliar ways. Explain, he said. I leaned against the counter, arms folded loosely, calm, controlled, convincing. I noticed the same car twice this week, once near the florist, once outside the clinic. I shrugged, like it didn't matter, like I wasn't calculating every word. Probably nothing. That was the key, understatement. Ciro lifted his head slowly, removed his glasses. That was when I knew the lie had landed. Why didn't you tell me immediately? He asked, not angry, focused. I didn't want to be dramatic. He stood, walked toward me, eyes scanning my face like he was mapping it for threats. His hands never touched me, but his presence wrapped around me anyway, tight, invasive, protective. You don't get to decide what matters, he said quietly. I do, I replied just as softly. When it's my body. That gave him pause. Just a flicker. Enough. Within an hour, my world had doubled. 2 additional guards. Routes altered. Check-ins every time I left the house. Ciro didn't announce it. He didn't ask my permission. He just did it. And the way he did it, the quiet efficiency, the unspoken concern, did something treacherous to me. It made me feel held. Which was ironic considering I'd built the fear myself. That night, we sat together on the terrace. No staff. No guards close enough to hear. The city stretched beneath us, all glitter and noise and secrets. Ciro poured me wine. Real wine this time, not the polite sips I usually pretended to enjoy. You're sure you didn't recognize the driver? He asked. Sure. I lied again. He nodded, gaze distant, thoughtful. I don't like not knowing where danger comes from, he said. I prefer it facing me. I know. He looked at me then. Really looked. You're calmer than you should be. I lifted one shoulder. I'm married to you. I learned early that panic doesn't help. That earned me a slow exhale from him, something like respect, something like regret. He didn't drink much after that. Instead, he talked. Not about business, not about strategy, about his father. Just a few sentences, nothing sentimental, but enough to matter. He taught me never to hesitate, Ciro said, eyes on the city. Hesitation gets you buried. Did he hesitate? I asked. Ciro's jaw tightened. Once. I didn't press. I didn't need to. The silence stretched, heavy but not uncomfortable, and for the first time since I'd known him, it felt like he'd forgotten to keep something locked. I tucked that away, carefully. Hey, before I tell you what he did next, are you still with me? Because he is now listening. Now let's get back to my downfall. Later, when we went to bed, he didn't hover. He didn't question. He just stayed close. His arm rested around me, not possessive, anchoring, like he was reminding himself I was real. Still there, still his. I stared into the dark, counting my breaths. This was the risk, not getting caught, but getting comfortable. The next morning, I overheard him on the phone. Low voice, Italian, sharp and clipped, double the rotation, no mistakes. If anyone gets close to her, a pause. Then colder. End it. The call ended. My stomach twisted, not with guilt, with clarity. This was what I'd invited. This was what I'd wanted. And still, something about the way he'd said her, not my name, not my wife, made my chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with strategy. That afternoon, he surprised me again. He handed me a slim phone. Untraceable, secure. Only my number, he said. Use it if you feel watched, or if you just want me to come get you. Just want me to come get you. I took it, fingers brushing his. Electric, brief, dangerous. You don't trust anyone else with that? I asked. I don't need to. I slipped the phone into my pocket. The lie sat between us, invisible and alive. And for the first time since I'd started this game, I wondered, not if I could win, but what it would cost me if I did. He never drank on weeknights. Ciro De Luca was not a man ruled by indulgence, not by appetite, not by rage, not by fear. Everything was curated, managed, controlled, which is why the half-empty glass of whiskey in his hand at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday felt like an alarm bell. I didn't ask what was wrong. I just walked in, barefoot in one of his shirts, and sat on the edge of the sofa in his private study. He didn't stop me. He didn't speak. Not at first. He stared into the fire like it held something he couldn't put down. His tie was loose, the top button of his shirt undone, and for a brief, quiet moment he looked tired. That terrified me more than anything. I'm not like him. His voice broke the silence. Low, rough, I didn't respond. Ciro sipped once more, sipped once more, then set the glass down too carefully. My father, he clarified. He ruled with fear. Rain, he liked pain. I stayed still. Ciro wasn't a man who shared, not memories, not ghosts. So I didn't reach for him, didn't move, just listened. He used to beat my mother when she asked questions, he said. Once she asked about a deal he made without telling her. That night, he left her in the snow. My throat tightened, but I kept my face blank. I was 12, he said. I dragged her inside myself. He rubbed a hand over his jaw, looking away from me now. I swore I'd never be like that I'd never marry. I nodded slowly. But you did. His mouth twisted. I needed you. Not wanted. Needed. There was a difference. One I understood far too well. You don't hurt me, I said. Even when you want to. He didn't deny it. Didn't flinch. Just looked at me with something almost human. I watch you more than you think, he murmured. I felt it then. That rare, disorienting feeling that twisted something deep in my chest. The part of me that had planned this for years should have been smug. Victorious. Instead, I felt seen, and seen was far more dangerous than feared. He stood suddenly and walked to his desk, pulled out a black file from a locked drawer. Come here, he said. I did. He laid it open on the desk. Names, codes, territories, and in the center, a single name, circled twice in red ink. Alessandro Ferri. Elia's noise, Ciro said. Distraction. But he tapped the name. He's the only one with the resources and the reach to cut my legs out from under me, and he's trying. I stared down at it like it meant nothing. But I knew exactly who Alessandro Ferri was. And now, I knew exactly who Ciro feared. You can't trust Luca with this? I asked carefully. I trust Luca with my empire, Ciro said, but not with you. That hit harder than I expected. I looked up at him, suddenly unsteady. You think he'd use me? I think he watches you, Ciro replied, voice sharp. I think he's smart enough to know what I care about. There it was, not love, not softness, not even trust. But value. I mattered because I was his. And yet, somewhere in the back of my mind, I wanted to matter for me. I swallowed that down. This wasn't the time for doubt. It was a gift. He'd just handed me the name of the only man who made him bleed, and he didn't even realize it. When I reached for the file, his hand caught my wrist. Not hard, just firm. Why are you really still here, Gatina? the question wrapped around my throat. Because I need to win, because I can't forget how it started, because somewhere along the way, maybe I stopped hating you the way I should. I haven't finished what I started, I whispered. Ciro searched my face like the answer was buried in my skin. Then, finally, he let go. I closed the file, locked it in my mind, and walked out of his office barefoot, heartbeat uneven, skin still warm where his fingers had touched me. Because tonight, I didn't just gain information. I gained something better. He cracked. And I was still standing. I never wanted his empire. I only wanted to know if I could take it. That's the difference between power and ambition. One is born from survival, the other from pain. And I'd had enough of both. The plan wasn't complicated, it never is, when you've spent years in silence, listening, learning, becoming invisible enough to be underestimated but present enough to know where the cracks live. Ciro trusted 3 people with his inner circle: Luca, Aaliyah, and me. Aaliyah was reckless. Ciro knew that, tolerated it for now. Luca was loyal, but watchful. And me? I was the wife, the woman no one saw coming. That afternoon, I visited the greenhouse. Ciro thought I went there to find peace. I went there because Aaliyah's girl Talia always followed me. She liked to gossip, liked to cry, liked to complain when she thought I was soft and safe enough to absorb it. I swear he's hiding something, she whined, tearing petals from a camellia. He never lets me near the real meetings anymore, always on edge. I handed her a cloth napkin for her tears. Maybe he's scared. Of who? Ciro? I gave her a gentle smile. No, of what happens if Ciro finds out he's leaking. She froze. And just like that, her fear did half the work. I didn't have to accuse anyone. I just had to plant the doubt. Talia did the rest for me. By sundown, Aaliyah had made the call. To someone who wasn't Ciro. About a shipment that didn't exist. To a dock that had already been compromised. I let it happen, and when the fallout came, it came like fire. Ciro lost 4 men that night. Not because of me, because of trust. He stormed through the front doors, shirt stained, hands bloodied, rage clinging to him like smoke. I met him in the foyer, barefoot, calm. I'm fine, I said. I didn't ask, he snapped. But he reached for me anyway, pressed his forehead to mine, and breathed. Pause, before I keep going. This is where the consequences started collecting their debt. Now, back to the second the world turned on us. He let me tend to his wounds, sat between my knees like a king, bleeding for no one but me. I dabbed at the cut on his temple. He didn't flinch. You think it was Aaliyah? I asked. I know it was. Then why didn't you kill him? Ciro looked up, eyes colder than anything I'd ever seen from him. Because I want to see who he was working with first. And that was when I knew he still didn't see me. Because I was the one who led Aaliyah to that dock. Not with orders, with suggestion, with silence, with the kind of influence you don't see until it's already burned the ground beneath your feet. Later that night, I stood in the doorway of his study while he poured himself another drink. His shirt was off, his scars on full display, not the physical ones, though they were there, the real ones, the ones that made him cruel, the ones that made him mine. I should have trusted my instincts, he muttered. I stepped closer. You did. No, I trusted you. A beat. Then he looked up, something raw slipping through. And now I don't know if that was a mistake. My heart stuttered, but I didn't show it. Then don't trust me, I whispered. Watch me instead. He stared at me like he didn't know whether to kiss me or cage me. Maybe both. And maybe that's when I took the crown without asking. Because control isn't taken in a single act. It's taken in the slow bend of loyalty, the shift of gravity. The moment the most dangerous man in the city says nothing, but follows you with his eyes as you leave the room. He didn't say my name. He said nothing at all. Just stood in the doorway of our bedroom while I removed my earrings one by one and laid them neatly on the velvet tray. The silence behind me crackled like lightning about to strike. I didn't turn around. Not yet, because I already knew this was the moment. The one I'd prepared for since the day I became Miara De Luca. I saw it reflected in the mirror. Ciro's jaw tense, his hands curled into fists, his eyes dark and unreadable. But not angry, not yet. Worse, wary. Why? His voice was low, controlled, a question without context, a test without instruction. I turned, slowly. He stepped forward, stopping inches from me. Aaliyah's gone, he said, vanished, clean, like someone warned him. I tilted my head. And you think that was me? He didn't blink. I think I've been too focused on everyone else. I waited, let him spiral through the possibilities, because the truth wasn't that I betrayed him. The truth was I'd never belonged to him the way he thought. I trusted you, he said finally. I walked past him to the window, calm and barefoot on the cold marble floor. The city glowed below us, bright, blissfully unaware. You didn't, I replied, voice soft. You watched me, you kept me, you studied me, but you never trusted me. Silence. Then, behind me, you were learning me. And you were teaching me, I said, turning to face him. Every time you ignored me, every time you handed me a crown and called it a collar, every time you looked at me like I was yours and forgot to wonder if I ever wanted to be. His mouth parted, just slightly. But no words came. I stepped closer, close enough to feel the tension rolling off him like heat. He didn't move, didn't breathe. And when I placed my hand against his chest, flat, open, steady, he let me. His heart was a hammer beneath my palm. I didn't lie about the man in the car, I whispered. But I let you react. I watched what you do. And I remembered that power is never loud, Ciro. It's silent, patient, precise. His hand caught my wrist, not hard, not soft, just enough to hold me there. You want to rule me? No, I whispered. I want to know if I already do. He pulled me into him with a force that stole my breath. His mouth hovered over mine but didn't claim it. Not yet. You're mine, he said, even if you burn this world to the ground. I smiled. Then light the match for me. His mouth crashed into mine, rough, desperate, furious. But underneath all of it was something dangerous. Need. He backed me toward the wall, breath hot against my cheek, hands sliding over my waist with possession that bordered on worship. I arched into him, fingers tangled in his shirt, heartbeat riotous in my chest. Not fear, not victory. Something else entirely. We didn't speak as he lifted me onto the bed. We didn't speak as he undressed me like a man unwrapping a secret meant for him and him alone. We didn't speak. But everything changed, because this wasn't conquest. This wasn't dominance. This wasn't the cold burn of power laced in lust. This was surrender. His, mine, ours. After, we lay in silence, the sheets tangled around us, my head on his chest, his fingers trailing lazy patterns down my spine. The firelight flickered against his skin. And in the stillness, he said it. The words I'd been waiting for. The ones I didn't expect to matter. I don't want to hurt you. Not can't. Not won't. Don't want to. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the good wife or the calculating woman playing him. I felt like his. And he felt like mine. When I woke, it was still dark. The kind of dark that feels personal. Like it's choosing you, wrapping around you, refusing to let go. Ciro's arm was draped across my waist, heavy with sleep. His breath was warm against the back of my neck, steady, human. He hadn't slept beside me like this in years, maybe never. And for the first time, the silence between us wasn't strategy. It was peace. Terrifying, fragile peace. I didn't move, not because I didn't want to, because I didn't dare. One wrong breath and the illusion would shatter. The softness, the safety, the sense that this man who'd once built walls higher than palaces had let them fall, at least for the night. But illusions are dangerous things, because sometimes they feel like truth. His fingers twitched. Then his voice, low, rough with sleep, slid across the dark. You're still here. I swallowed. You sound surprised. He didn't answer right away. Then, I am. I turned to face him, slowly, cautiously, like he might vanish if I moved too fast. His eyes were open but soft, not cold, not calculating, just watching. You could have broken me last night, I whispered. His jaw flexed. That was never the goal. No, I asked. Then what was? He exhaled like the answer tasted bitter. I wanted you to feel it. What? That you're mine. The silence thickened, stretched between us like a question neither of us knew how to answer. Then I said it. The one thing I never thought I'd admit. I stopped hating you. His eyes searched mine, not in suspicion, in disbelief. I don't know when it happened, I continued. Maybe after the first time you chose silence instead of violence. Maybe after I realized the man everyone fears is still haunted by his father's shadow. He looked away. You always saw more than I wanted you to. I reached for his hand, laced our fingers together. No, I said softly. I saw exactly what you wanted me to, and I let you think it was enough. He pulled me in then, pressed my face to his chest, held me like I wasn't a threat, like I wasn't the woman who'd manipulated his men, restructured his trust, and put cracks in the very foundation of his kingdom. He held me like I was his home, and that did something to me I didn't plan for. It made me cry. Not loud, not messy, just one silent tear that slipped down my cheek and onto his skin. His hand moved to the back of my head. "Miara," he said quietly, "don't." "I'm not crying because I'm hurt," I whispered. "I'm crying because I don't know how to stay without planning my escape." He didn't let go, didn't flinch, just held me tighter. And when I finally pulled back, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Then don't stay. Choose me instead." Choose, not surrender, not obey. Choose. Later that morning, I watched him dress in silence. He was Ciro again, composed, polished, powerful. But something was different. Something had shifted. Before he left, he walked over, curled a finger beneath my chin, and kissed me once, slow and claiming. "You still want to burn me down?" he asked. I nodded. "Good," he murmured. "Then we'll rise from it together." And for the first time, I realized something I never wanted to admit. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about rebirth. He didn't take me to a restaurant, not a private suite, not the estate in Tuscany. He took me to his mother's villa, a place I didn't know existed until now, and Ciro De Luca didn't share secrets. So the fact that he was letting me walk into one barefoot, heart-pounding, wearing his jacket over my dress from last night, it meant something. I just didn't know what. Not yet. The villa sat on a hill surrounded by wildflowers, half-tamed and untouched. The kind of place you kept hidden because it meant something sacred or dangerous. Inside it was quiet, barely furnished. Nothing like his penthouse. No marble, no steel, no blood in the walls, just soft wood and silence. Ciro watched me walk into the center of the room like he was seeing a ghost. "I've never brought anyone here," he said. "Why me?" His jaw flexed. "Because I couldn't decide if I wanted to protect you from this place." He stepped closer. "Or let it protect me from you." I didn't speak. I didn't breathe. He reached into the inner pocket of his suit and pulled out a ring. Not the one he gave me when we married. Something different, older. It looked worn, real, like it carried weight beyond wealth. "This was my mother's," he said. I froze. "I was going to give it to someone else once," he added. "Someone you loved?" "No." His voice sharpened. "Someone my father approved of." He walked toward me, slow and deliberate. "I never gave it to her." "And now?" I asked. He held it between us. "I'm not asking you to rule beside me," he said. "I'll never step down. You know that." "I do. But I'm offering you something no one's ever had." My throat tightened. "And what's that?" "Me." Before I tell you what he did next, thank you for staying. Old friends and new ones alike, it means a lot. Now, let's finish the mess I started. I stared at the ring, not because I wanted it, but because I understood it now. This wasn't about jewels, or power, or even marriage. It was about choice, my choice. I could walk away now. Burn everything I built. Vanish into a life where I was finally free. But freedom without him? What kind of freedom was that? He stepped back like he didn't want to force me, didn't want this to be a trap. "You don't have to decide today," he said quietly. "I already have." He blinked. I walked over to him, took the ring from his hand and slipped it onto my finger. "I'll never lead your empire," I said, "and I'll never be soft enough for your world." "Good," he whispered. "Because I want to be your war now." His hands found my face, his lips met mine, and in that kiss, slow, searing, final, I gave him the one thing he never expected. Not forgiveness, not surrender. Faith. When we left the villa, I was still wearing his jacket, but this time I wasn't hiding inside it. I wore it like a crown. Power doesn't feel like lightning. It feels like stillness, like standing in a room where everyone is watching you, but no one moves until you do. Like knowing you could say one word and shift the whole room. I stood at Ciro's side during the quarterly council meet, wearing black silk and quiet confidence. He didn't introduce me. He didn't have to. Luca nodded at me like I belonged there. Elia's chair stayed empty. Ciro's fingers brushed the back of my hand once beneath the table. No one noticed. But I did. When the meeting ended and the men filtered out in silence, Ciro stayed seated. So did I. "You didn't speak," he said. "I didn't need to." He looked at me, not through me, not past me, at me. Like I was no longer the woman he'd tried to shape. Like I was something else entirely now. An equal in a war neither of us wanted to win. That night, he took me to the roof. Just the two of us. No guards. No plans. The city stretched beneath us, all silver and shadow. His world. Our world now. "You still look like you want to run," he said quietly. "I always will." "I know." His arm came around my waist, anchoring me with a touch that didn't bind, it invited. I won't stop you, he murmured. I know. But if you stay... I'm not staying, I said. I'm choosing. His breath caught. That was the difference, and he knew it. He turned to me, full body now, one hand sliding along my jaw, the other slipping into my hair like he needed to feel something real before he believed it. What does this look like to you? He asked. This, I whispered. This looks like the end of the story I thought I had to survive. And now? Now it looks like something I want. He kissed me, slow, sure, devastating in its finality. Not an apology, not a truce, a vow. We never burned the empire. We didn't have to. We just bent it until it fit us both. He stayed the king. I stayed the fire he couldn't put out. Some nights I still wonder who won. The woman who never left, or the man who never thought she'd stay. But then he says my name like it belongs only to him. Miara. And I know the answer. We didn't win against each other. We won with each other, because I played the good wife for years. Now I play with him, and together, we never lose. She was never just the wife. She was the strategy, the silence, the storm, and in the end, the love that remade the empire. Thank you for listening. If this story lit something in you, don't run. Stay and feel it. Share it, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss another story. See you in the next book.